Hello, everyone. Welcome. Thank you for joining us for the first event of our 2017 Center for Faith Studies lecture series. I am going to take a moment to introduce myself. My name is Courtney Holliday, and I am the new administrative assistant working under our director, whom I'll introduce in just a minute. I'm honored to work for this program. I'm very excited to see what this year has to offer for us. So just a few little housekeeping things before we begin. The restrooms are outside the sanctuary to the left, so please feel free to exit as you need to during the event. Afterwards, we're going to have some refreshments out in the commons, so please feel free to meet and greet with each other. Mike will be signing books. We also have some Divine Dance, which he co-authored, for sale. Inside your brochures or your programs, there are two white cards. One is an evaluation card. Please take the time to fill that out because your feedback is important to us and helps to make sure that we are making the biggest impact we can with these programs on the community. The second is information on Mike's bonus chapter that he wrote that goes along with the Divine Dance. It has all the information you need to access that chapter. Tomorrow morning, if you'd like to join us at 8:30, we are going to have a very informal breakfast with Mike before we send him off, so come enjoy some discussion with him and Chris. Other than that, I'd like to take this time to thank our CFS volunteers, the people with the name tags and the blue ribbons. Without them, this would not be possible. They saved my sanity tonight, so thank you very much to the Center for Faith Studies volunteers. And now I'll introduce to you our Associate Pastor and the Director of the Center for Faith Studies, the Reverend Dr. Chris Alexander.
Thanks, Courtney. And thank you, Courtney, for putting this all together. Courtney is new to us this year. We've had some transition in the Center for Faith Studies, and we've expanded it quite a bit to include all adult education here at Countryside, as well as all of the journey groups that happen here at Countryside. And so it's a much bigger process now, and one of my roles as the associate pastor is to oversee that Center for Faith Studies. And so we brought Courtney on to help keep all the administrative tasks going and happening and organized, and she's fabulous at it, so thank you very much. My experience with Mike Morrell has been doubled in the last 24 hours from the time that we had before. But I met Mike originally through Darkwood Brew. He was one of our guests through Skype, and he had much longer, curlier hair then. Do you remember that? Yes. And I had much longer, curlier hair then at the time too. So we both done really well that way. One of the things I think is so fabulous about Mike, you've read his bio here anyway. He is a blogger and a writer, a publishing consultant, author, coach, futurist, curator of book reviewing communities at the Speakeasy, and a student of the Living School. How's that for eclectic lifestyles, right? He does a little bit of everything because he's incredibly gifted in a lot of different areas. And one of his fabulous gifts that I think he possesses is the recognition that all of us have God inside of us, that we are the priesthood of all believers, that we are people who in fact have our own revelation of who God is and how God works in the world inside all of us. And he works with all different media in order to help pull that out in all of us. So I'm extremely excited for him to use some of his exercises that he's used around the country to instill that in us, the confidence we have in ourselves to be witnesses to the revelation of God in the world. So I'm very excited to bring Mike here with us and help lead us through some of those exercises. So without further ado, here is Mike Morrell.
Thank you, Chris.
Yeah.
All right. Well, welcome. And I feel like you all are welcoming me because this is my first time in your fair state. So really happy to be here. You know, tonight is going to be maybe a little bit different than a lecture. There certainly will be some content that we cover, but there are also going to be an interactive portion of the evening. So if it were possible, I would love if folks could kind of scoot up toward the front of the room. If you want to. If you don't, it's fine, but there will be an interactive component where we'll get to explore experiencing the Trinity face to face. So I'll wait if you all want to come up just a little bit. And while you're coming up, I just want to say, thank you for choosing to spend your Thursday night at a church gathering exploring the Trinity of all things, even with a person whose name is not Richard Rohr. To me, that speaks of your hunger. And it speaks to my hunger as well. Just this past week, there have been a couple of major new surveys of faith and religion in the United States that have come out. The Pew Research Survey showed that a quarter of U.S. adults now identify as spiritual but not religious, which is actually up 8 percentage points in the last 5 years. Rapidly growing sector of our population. But I found something interesting in the data. It said that 17% of the spiritual but not religious actually attend a faith community gathering on a weekly basis. Faith is still very important to them. 27% actually say just that. It's very important to them. Although 49% of spiritual but not religious folks don't darken the doors of faith communities anymore, if they ever have. Another recent survey that came out from the Public Religion Research Institute said that most of the people who are religiously unaffiliated are not atheists or agnostics, they're simply secular. And what that tells me is that perhaps they're looking for a spirituality, maybe even an image of and a relationship with God that works for them in a way that they simply haven't found lately. But I'm guessing that you don't need survey results to tell you that. Perhaps you have children, loved ones, grandchildren, friends who haven't found as compelling the American faith journey, the American faith experience as they used to. Maybe you even fall in that category. One of the reasons why Father Richard and I wrote this book, The Divine Dance, is because we recognize that the images of God that are prevalent in the United States and increasingly that we've exported across the West and around the world just aren't doing it anymore. They no longer have credibility. The way I frame the two dominant images of God that I see in the United States are the Zeusian God, the God with thunder in his footsteps and lightning in his fists, the sort of God of the American founding in some ways with the Puritans, this God that dangles us over a fire like sinners in the hands of an angry God. And on the other hand, we've had this more recent American export that I like to call the Seussian God, as in Dr. Seuss, as in the Cat in the Hat, wish fulfillment. What do you want? This God is Santa Claus and promises to give you everything that you want on the most surface level of your needs and desires. The only problem with that being that God often falls flat in our experience too. The Zeusian God is the God that continues to condemn our LGBT brothers and sisters and non-binary folks in the world. And the Seussian God is the God that a well-known megachurch pastor in Houston recently said after the hurricanes, "Chin up, folks, this is just a test from God, and you're going to pull through and still have your best life now." Neither of those seem to be doing it for us. And so when Father Richard and I were digging deep and we're saying, what is an image of God that rings credibly true, that authentically comes from our Christian tradition, that comes from Scripture, that comes from the most profound experiences of the poets and mystics and seekers and sages throughout the world, we discovered this God hiding in plain sight in an unlikely place, which is in the strange, confounding image of the Trinity. Trinity is often ignored in Christian faith and practice. It's seen as this bizarre divine math problem where 1 + 1 + 1 supposedly still equals 1. And, I've never been that great at math anyway, so it hasn't been that interesting to me. But the experience of Trinity, the experience of God as community, that somehow this three is one, this God as relationship, as vulnerability, as mutuality. Now that rings home. That rings true to me. And when I was invited to share with you all tonight about the book and about some of the exercises that are in the back of the book, ways that you can have your own experience of God as Trinity, your own experience of God in and as one another, I was invited to do a reading. And I'm just curious here, show of hands, there's no right or wrong answer to this. How many of you have already read The Divine Dance or read some of it? So, okay, a number of you. You're very familiar with it. Well, that helps shore up my decision tonight, which is I'm going to read something that I'm guessing most of you have not read, which is a selection from the bonus chapter of The Divine Dance, which is where I tell a little bit of my own story about why this is so meaningful to me. And incidentally, you can get this for free on my blog, mikemorrell.org/bonus chapter, if you'd like. It also contains some of the exercises we're going to do tonight. But I wanted to share this little slice of my story with you this evening. So, I'll never forget that night. I drove hundreds of miles to visit one of my best friends, and we hadn't seen each other face to face in years. We stayed up half the night talking, in addition to just catching up and being in person, which felt surreal in and of itself. We discussed the fact that I was facing a significant crossroads in my life. I didn't know what to do. Interspersed with conversation was a walk in the woods near the house where we were staying, dinner around the corner, and a movie about young adults who weren't really that good at being adults. They were actually behaving rather terribly, using each other while trying to figure out what they really wanted out of life. These figures on the screen were unhappy. They were lonely. And I was unhappy. I was lonely. Even here, spending time with one of my dearest friends, I felt invisible. And not just with my friend, with pretty much everyone close to me, I felt unknown. I felt lost in a crowd. After the movie, my friend went to bed, and I was left alone, with my thoughts, with nature surrounding me in this house, with myself on the hardwood floor of the living room. As much as I'd invested in the relationships in my life, my marriage, my family, my friends, I wondered if we weren't all engaged in some elaborate dance of mutual usury. It didn't feel malicious. We were simply desperate to regain some sense of peace and steadiness in our lives, and we weren't afraid to trip all over each other to get it. So that night, I journaled some lyrics from an REM song called Walk Unafraid. They claim to walk unafraid, but I'll be clumsy instead. Hold my love or leave me high. I felt anything but unafraid in that moment, though. If life was a dance, I was the wallflower. I'd seen this shuffling for what it was, and I'd become acutely aware of my own two left feet. The jig was up. And that interestingly parallels my real-life dance skills, too. So, having dropped out of this dance of desperation, after a few decades of feeling left out, this all caught up with me, all on one lonely and anguished night. I felt abandoned. I felt disconnected, not only in the awkward gait of my relationships with others, but even feeling ill at ease in my own body. I was wondering what life on this increasingly distressed planet was all about. And to be honest, I felt like God was the most estranged stranger of them all, like a faded blue ribbon collecting dust in my childhood closet. But old habits die hard, I guess, like those poignant stories where somebody dials up a recently departed loved one just to hear their voice digitally mediated through the voicemail greeting one last time. I wondered if I could hear another voice on the end of my soul line. And so I decided to pray. Not just any prayer, but specifically contemplative prayer, a kind of minimalist prayer of letting go, where less is more. For me, it's held as the barest intention to be, sitting in my partialness before the all. It's a wordless prayer, where one sits dignified and humbled all at once, before the God of one's understanding. And just maybe, One hopes to encounter the God beyond one's understanding. In contemplative prayer, there is no goal, only one of simple intent to be present in compassion to the one who we hope against hope is love. So that night, though, I wasn't feeling love, I was feeling devastated. Feeling left out of the flow that seemed to draw some folks together, while all too many of us were floundering apart. Reaching out to people, reaching out to God, and going within, I dredged all these bodies of the supposed deep, but had been coming up with nothing. Still, I wanted to be attentive to this moment in time, to this instance of prayer. And so I sat. Sometimes contemplative prayer begins with reading scripture before dissolving in silence. Other times, it can begin with a song or a chant. This time, what initially floated into my consciousness were the opening lines to a familiar hymn. Come, thou fount of every blessing, tune my heart to sing thy grace. Except there was nothing at all familiar about what happened next, because that moment became an eternal moment. That instant became like all right now. Tune my heart to sing thy grace was reverberating in my body like a bell. And it felt as though my heart, emptied of all else save the all, could pick up every vibration of grace. And I happen to have two artifacts with me at my impromptu contemplative prayer time. One was a small Tibetan singing bowl, not actually this one, but one like it. And I also had my favorite icon, this very one, Andrei Rublev's Trinity, which we talk about some in the book and is also on display up there. Tune my heart to sing thy grace, I whispered over and over again, slowly but urgently, an active prayer of opening. And it happened in time with a singing bowl. Tune my heart to sing thy grace. Now, believe it or not, I tend to be a fairly, in my head, rational and calculating creature. Full-blown mystical and contemplative experiences really aren't my usual forte, so if they're not yours either, I can totally relate. But even so, I seem to know what to do and say to stay in that building flow. My whispered refrain and my tracing of the edge of the singing bowl with its mallet, it came haltingly at first, but then with growing sound and conviction. The vibrations of that bowl melded with the vibrations of my words, becoming a kind of physical manifestation or artifact in and of themselves, just hanging there in the air. I repeated both the chiming and the whispered singing, tune my heart to sing thy grace, a few more times. And I sat there in the thickness of what I was now aware of everywhere. And what was it? Well, it felt like the roof of perception was lifted off, ripped open, and that a grace-tuned reality was actually flooding in. It came through my chest, through my eyes, and my limbs actually felt overwhelmed. But even this was but a herald. Blessed Trinity, not the icon, but the ever-loving vibrancy of the three-in-one self, signified by this beloved etching, suddenly filled the room, which might sound odd to hear, I realize. But I bowed low, honoring this depiction of Father, Son, and Spirit, or Abba, Isa, and Ruah, as I had come to know these divine Trinitarian names, named in a Middle Eastern tongue near my ancestral Turkey, where the Cappadocian fathers and mothers originally articulated this idea of Trinity. Reclining at a table together, a communion of bread and wine, marking their communion with each other. There's such graciousness and deference and forbearance playing on each member's face in this icon, sounding through a kind of acceptance, admiration, and compassion that began evaporating my sense of isolation. Now, I come from solid Protestant stock myself, unlike Father Richard. I spent a decade with a radically decentralized house church movement. My spiritual and political leanings tend to be in the neighborhood of iconoclastic and anarchist. But I wasn't bowing to the icon. I was honoring the reality behind and through it, which spilled out into this living room this night while I was sitting there praying, in living color. My feelings of being alone and disembodied and disconnected were playfully challenged by what I can only describe as a steady Trinitarian gaze of unconditional presence. Kissing the ground seemed the only appropriate response. "You are so kind." I found these words escaping my lips as sheer divine goodness became more and more palpable to me, not only in the space of the room, but throughout time as well. I started to weep. This loving divine presence was moving effortlessly through my at times hackneyed biography, backward in time, lighting dark corners of my life story, lifting grime off pages long since accepted as inevitably stained. My pulp fiction of a narrative began feeling like an illuminated manuscript. I don't know if any of you all tuned into the audio Divina that happened here last night, but one of the refrains from the psalm that we worked through was, I believe it was Psalm 139, that even the darkness is as light to you. It felt like that. It felt as if the author and finisher of our faith, as Hebrews puts it, was editing my life, not changing one iota of the action, but leaving the story noticeably better and more coherent. Trinity was reweaving the fabric of my life forward in time as well, using the same material, but producing a much finer thread count. I'm open, I felt myself exclaiming, which startled me. It felt like the channel was finally clear for so much more compassion and grace, acceptance and belonging to pass through my being, and not stopping with me either, but even flowing to and through others. And oh, the others. Sharing my experience of that night wouldn't be complete without expressing how the others showed up. All those people with who just hours before I felt so disconnected, the circle of Trinity became a conga line of family, of friends, and even enemies. It turns out everyone has a case of mistaken identity. I began seeing their faces one after another, parents, old roommates, confidants, and ex-friends, far and near. Thinking of each one of them made me weep afresh. It was like I was being met by the universe in each of their lovely forms. Even seeing the faces of people whom I generally regarded as having wounded me didn't faze me. I now saw pristine intentions through their flawed actions. That gave me a lot of grace. Their hurtful actions and my hurtful actions toward them, they were simply misapprehensions of love. We just didn't know any better, playing partial and ignorant of the flow as we were. And how could we know any better? But now I knew. And so I loved all of them back with this blazing intensity, still there in that moment of prayer. And loving them was precisely loving God. I'm ready. I'm finally ready, I said, amazed at the radiance I was experiencing on this otherwise ordinary night in a house in the woods. The divine dance of Trinity, about which I'd turn out to have a lot to learn and a lot to say about later on, became one with the many in my life. In this three-part harmony, in this moment at least, everything made sense. Eventually, of course, this transfigured peak of experience faded, which I had mixed feelings about, to be perfectly honest. I never wanted this love-soaked height of rarefied, epiphany to subside, but at the same time, I wondered if my tears and my incapacitating joy would ever stop. So it did. But what has lingered is this unshakable sense of God's unconditional presence with, in, and as my life, and as all of your lives as well. And this with, in, and as, I believe, is the ancient gift and mystery of Holy Trinity, a pearl of great price that has long been buried in the dusty ground of deserted dogma. So that, in a nutshell, is what brought me to this project of exploring Trinity and the meaning of Trinity. It was such a profound experience. And as I've gotten to share about this experience with folks like you around the country, one of the things that I've been especially delighted to be able to do is to invite you into your own experience, to whatever extent is appropriate and feels safe and good tonight. And so, if it's okay, I'd like to lead you in a couple of the exercises that are in the back of this book, as well as in the bonus chapter. So, before we do that, though, I'm wondering if we just take a moment to breathe together. You just breathe in deeply and let it out with a sound. Let's do that one more time. Let's breathe in deep and out with a sound. And in a moment, I'm going to give you an opportunity to connect with your own experience of God in and as those around you. But for right now, I'm going to invite you to actually connect with yourself. So if you want to, go ahead and close your eyes and connect with yourself right here and right now. You know, Jesus followers have a time-honored habit of the heart that we call practicing the presence of God. In this way of being, we're seeking to extend our awareness beyond our usual confined perception, radiating outward beyond the mechanical thinking and impulses that drive so many of our moments, limiting what we're even aware of. When we practice the presence of God, we take in more beauty, more pain, more awe, more feeling, more astonishment, more clarity, more mystery. We become alive to God all around us, breathing through us, in us. Some mystics even say, as us. As the 14th century Dominican mystic Meister Eckhart once remarked, "The eye through which I see God is the same eye through which God sees me. My eye and God's eye are one seeing, one knowing, one love." With this in mind, what does Jesus' great commandment mean? Loving God with all our heart, soul, mind, and strength. Loving our neighbor as ourself. What does this mean? Who is this self, whose love is like a tuning fork, setting the tone for your love of everyone else? Right now, with your eyes still closed, feel yourself breathing again. Feel the air as it leaves your lungs. Feel the sensation of your feet on the ground, what your body feels like in the seat. What does it feel like to be you right now, to occupy your skin? Love your neighbor as you love yourself. The phrase one another shows up over 110 times in the New Testament. Tonight, we're going to practice the presence of each other with the same quality of attention and awareness that the mystics and sages throughout the ages have focused toward practicing the presence of God. So, if you want, you can open your eyes now. Can we be welcoming of what arises in connection with each other? How much room can you make for feelings and sensations that might come up? Oftentimes, words can take us away from connection. We're going to try one of the exercises from the back of the book called Mirroring the Divine Gaze. To do that, I would like you all to pair up. So whatever way feels natural, if you're able to turn to someone to your left or right, or turn around in your pew and connect with someone, and if you're sitting in a place that doesn't have a person nearby and you'd like to play, I encourage you to just move around a little bit and find someone. So if you can find another human to connect with. Yeah, feel free to move around. We've got space. I wanted y'all to come a little closer just so you'd have more humans nearby, but occupy the space however you'd like. And there's no right or wrong way to do this. The opportunity is to just pay attention to your experience and explore what might be available. And when you connect with another person, especially without words, It might come easy for some of you, but for others of you, it might be difficult. And I want you to know that it's okay to look away at any time or to reground with self like we just did. You could even close your eyes and do that. And then when you're ready, if you're ready, you can just reconnect with that person, pick up where you left off. So sit facing each other and go ahead and close your eyes again briefly. Find your center, your stable witness, where Father Richard says is where the Holy Spirit can be most reliably found. And with your eyes still closed, extend your awareness to this person facing you. Can you feel their presence? Now, when you're ready, open your eyes and just come to a place of silent connection with this person that's sitting across from you. To what extent are you willing to be seen? To what extent are you willing to see this other person that's facing you right now? To what extent are you enjoying this person? To what extent are you enjoying yourself? To whatever degree this might feel vulnerable or difficult, can you welcome and embrace that and meet them anyway? How much acceptance can you bring to this moment right now for yourself and for this other person? And if there's a way that you're trying to manage how you're being experienced, what would it look like to let that go? If there's anything that you're trying to hide or protect, what would it look like to let that go? If this person could see right through you to the core of your being, to what extent would you be able to welcome that? Okay, come to a place of pause. You can break your gaze now if you want, and give your partner a sign of acknowledgement, whatever feels appropriate. Handshake, hug, high five, namaste. And now, I'm going to invite you to do this one more time, switching partners. So move around if you need to, or face someone behind you if you need to. Just find someone else that you haven't done this with yet, and let's switch partners. Okay. Once again, go ahead and close your eyes for a moment and reground with this experience of yourself, letting that other connection go, whatever you loved about it, whatever you hated about it. It's gone now. Reconnect with you, eyes closed, feeling the weight of yourself in your seat. And with your eyes still closed, see if you can expand your awareness to the person who is across from you. And when you're ready, open your eyes and come to a place of silent connection with this new human being sitting in front of you. How does your experience of being you change as you connect with this new human being? How much of your attention is on yourself versus on the other person? And could you possibly hold both of you in your attention? If this person were suffering or even dying, what would you want them to know about you, about life, and about this moment right now? what would you want to make available for them? How would you want to meet them in this moment? What would it be like if this connection was all there had ever been and all that there ever would be? Would you have been there and done that? Or would there be an endless process of discovery, exploration, fascination? Is it possible that everything you've ever wanted in connection is available to you in this moment, right now? What if this was your last few moments alive? What would you want to drop or let go of? And what would you want to embrace? When you're ready, you can break this connection and give your partner a sign of acknowledgement. I'm noticing like a softness come into the room. And I would love to take some shares from you all. How was this for you? And they don't have to be positive, by the way. It could be good, bad, whatever. I just want to hear, how was this for you?
Really, really. I really felt connected. Very, very connected.
You felt connected?
Both to God and to the person.
Wow. Was there a difference in your quality of experience between your first partner and your second partner? Different flavors? Gotcha.
Unique, but deep.
Wow. Anyone else? What was this like for you? Yeah.
I found it very challenging, but sticking, I wanted to break my gaze many times, but I stayed with it instead and I felt it go deeper as I let go of that resistance. It just went deeper, and it just got better and better with both partners.
Wow. So you felt some resistance at first, but as you stayed with the practice, it got deeper. If you could name what that resistance is, what would that be?
Self-consciousness.
Self-consciousness. Okay. So being seen is like kind of a deer in headlights experience. Got it. Thank you. Who else would like to share what this has been like for you? Yeah.
In a way, it's almost invasive in the sense that you're entering into someone's space in their mind, their heart.
Invasive, yeah.
We have all kinds of barriers to prevent that. And it strips some of those barriers away. And it's kind of exciting to imagine it possibly like that.
It's exciting to imagine that you actually have permission to like look at another human being, unblinking, which when you think about it is how babies often look at us. And toddlers. Like there's just no defense there. They're just looking at us. And it can be so disarming. So it's exciting. I'm glad you mentioned that too, because in some species of animal, as well as in some human cultures, eye contact is like, it's love, it's invitation, it's come on over. But in some species of animals, and in some human cultures, unguarded eye contact is a declaration of war, right? Like it doesn't come supernatural to us. And so, consciously choosing to let in another person is a sacred thing. And to me, it's a very profound way to experience the image of God in each other. I believe there was another person over here that wanted to share. You felt like an electrical current in that connection. Yeah. How many tonight practice with at least one person who you've never met before? Oh, wow. Okay. Got it. Does anyone want to speak to the quality of what it was like to connect like that with someone they knew versus someone they didn't? Yeah.
That was what I was going to share. One was with someone I know well.
Uh-huh.
Just met tonight.
Uh-huh.
And the different,
Mm-hmm.
trials that we've been through. But then it just melded into this deep sense of love. And then with the one person I didn't know, there was a connection that ended up kind of in the same place.
Wow.
It without the history, without
Mm.
the knowledge, but just this kind of sense of connection and love, regardless of familiarity.
So it surprised you that you seem to be able to go to a similar place with someone that you have just met. Wow. So grounding this experience in everyday life, obviously we can't just go around beatifically eye-gazing with random strangers on the street, oftentimes. Although I do find that if I'm able to be in a more connected place with myself, that I can just sort of soften my gaze as I go throughout the world. If I'm shopping somewhere or walking down the street, and a loving glance even, which, most of the time a glance is permissible, even between total strangers, that can make such a difference in a person's day and even in my own when that loving glance is returned. And then if you happen to be with someone that you feel safer with, a loved one, a friend, you can invite them to play this, to experience this, and say, hey, you want to try something? You want to play a game? And there is a brief description of this in the back of the Divine Dance, so I invite you to try that. Yes?
Now, if you do that, I found your narrative to be very beneficial when I was looking, kind of, especially with the person that I didn't know as well.
Mm-hmm.
It was very helpful for me to kind of have the guide of what to think about.
To have some prompts.
Yeah, whereas like I wouldn't necessarily have that if I tried it on my own.
It's true. It's true. Yeah. I don't know that those prompts are in the book, but if there is some way to have email addresses or something collected, I would be happy to share those with anyone who is interested to have those prompts to try. So I'll maybe after we're done, I'll leave it to Chris or someone to help figure out how that might be possible, if it is. Because, yeah, I agree. Sometimes those prompts can be helpful. Yes?
I'd like to say that I have to gaze with two people that, in full disclosure, I already know.
Uh-huh.
Practice dropping the mind and having a sense of no person. But I really noticed in gazing in their eyes,
Mm-hmm.
I'm really interested in creating a person or history out of their eye gaze.
Uh-huh.
But I never saw such beauty. Those
Hmm.
eyes were the most beautiful eyes. I just realized that I really had that sense that I was looking in my own eyes.
Wow.
But they were just so pretty.
Mm.
Just such beauty.
So if I'm understanding you, you're saying you have experience with both of these people in like a meditation context, or?
We practice through meditation and through, I think, Vedanta.
Oh, uh-huh.
The experience of person.
Yeah, the experience of no self.
And it was very nice to have this opportunity. Thank you for the license to do that.
You're welcome. You're welcome. I give you license. Anytime you want to do it, just blame it on me if someone, doesn't like it. I think you speak to something really important because, in the book, we include several classic Christian disciplines, like even the one that I was describing, my bonus chapter, where I was doing solo centering prayer, contemplative prayer. And those are time-tested and those are amazing. But I also think if we take this image of God as Trinity seriously, that we ought to think about how some of our spiritual practices, our deep spiritual practices, can in fact be social, can in fact involve one another. And that is a wonderful segue to the next and final exercise that we're going to try here tonight, which I call the Wise Teacher Game. And for the Wise Teacher Game, this will be you all breaking into groups of 3. So if you could get into groups of 3 with whomever, and feel free to utilize the space. You can spread out a little bit. In fact, I might encourage you to spread out a little bit for this. And I don't know if there are any logistical notes that need to be named in making that possible, countryside folks, or should they just kind of go wherever in pews? Well, groups of 3, getting in groups of 3, and I'm just saying yeah, it might just look like one of you turning around in a pew and facing 2 others in a pew. There are also free form chairs over there. Feel free to arrange those if you get even more bold. So take a moment and break into triads. So, getting in your groups of 3. And if there's anyone who's left out of a group of 3 who wants to participate, raise your hand and we'll make sure that you get paired. Do we have some odd people out? Okay. So we have one odd person out. Do any of you stragglers want to play? It won't hurt you, I promise. If not, you can join an extra group. Do we have a group of 2 or no? You have a group of 2. Okay. All right, we have a third. Beautiful. Okay. And again, just trust yourself. If there's anything you don't want to do, feel free not to. And this is going to be gentle. It's just a game. So taking another moment to go ahead and get in position with your triad. This game, Wise Teacher, is to ask ourselves, how often do we truly give ourselves or those in our lives permission to speak life-giving wisdom? You know, as people of faith, we believe that we're indwelled by the very Spirit of God. Protestants, which, soon we're going to be celebrating the 500th anniversary of the Protestant Reformation, brought up this biblical theme that was long buried, which was the priesthood of all believers. And yet in practice, we often outsource our own authority to leaders or experts or those whom we believe have credentials. We sit in church for years with a secondhand faith, hearing about God, but we never sometimes hear directly from God. In this exercise, we're going to see if hearing and sharing directly from our own experience with God is possible. Now, you might be thinking, who am I to receive insight and share it with others? I encourage you to consider, who are you not to? According to those wise teachers of old, whose words are recorded in our sacred scripture, this is our birthright. They said things like, the anointing you received from Christ remains in you, and you do not need anyone to teach you. 1 John 2:27. Or, do you not know that you are a temple of God and the Spirit of God dwells within you? 1 Corinthians 3:16. And finally, these words are from Jesus himself. He says, very truly I tell you, whoever believes in me will do the works I have been doing, and they will do even greater things than these because I'm going to the Father. And I will do whatever you ask in my name, so that the Father may be glorified in the Son. You ask me for anything in my name, and I will do it. John 14:12-14. So, could you be such a wise teacher, indwelled by the Spirit, doing these greater things? Let's see what extent you can embody this role right now, even if you aren't sure you believe it quite just yet. Act as if you are a wise teacher, whether you are or not. To what extent might this eternal God-given wisdom dwell in you directly, available to sound through to others? Let's find out. So I'm going to invite you all to close your eyes again and connect with yourself. Breathe in and maybe let it out with a sound. Let's do that again. Let's breathe in, let it out with a sound. Right now, what does it feel like to be you? Are you feeling calm? Feeling a little nervous? It's all okay, whatever it is that you are experiencing. With your eyes still closed, see if you can expand your awareness to the other 2 people in your circle. These people that you're choosing to spend a moment in time with. When you're ready, you can open your eyes. And each of you is going to take turns embodying the role of the wise teacher, while the other 2 of you embody the role of the curious student. Now, students can ask any curious question, any sincere question about life, reality, or God. There's only one rule. When you are asking your question, students, you begin your question with, "Oh, wise teacher." So, The person with the shortest hair in your group is the first wise teacher. The other two of you, let fly your questions. I'm going to time us, so you just ask any curious question prefaced by, "Oh, wise teacher." And if you're the wise teacher, just answer from your heart, whatever comes to mind. And you can begin. Okay, wise teachers, bring your wise teaching to a close. And students, I invite you to give the teachers a moment of feedback using this sentence stem. What I'll take into my life as a result of your teachings is, And wise teacher, this is an opportunity to simply receive your students' reflections. No response is needed, but a simple thank you or a nonverbal sign of acknowledgement. So now just take a few moments, students, and give your teachers feedback. What I will take into my life as a result of your teachings is, and you can begin. Okay, students, begin wrapping up your feedback. Wrapping up your feedback to your teacher. One final round of thanks. And wise teacher, you've had a long and illustrious career. Now it's time for you to step down and choose your lineage successor. So if you have been the wise teacher, go ahead and choose the person who will be the next wise teacher in your triad now. Okay. If you've chosen your new wise teacher, go ahead and close your eyes again and reconnect to yourself, letting that experience go, whatever role you just had, letting that go, re-engaging with what it's like to be you right here and right now. Without losing this connection to yourself and what it's like to be you right here and right now, see if you can expand your awareness to the other two people who are in your triad. And open your eyes. If you are the wise teacher now, be prepared to be asked questions. If you are the students now, once more, ask any questions about anything at all from a place of sincere curiosity, prefaced with, "O wise teacher," and you can begin. Okay, wise teachers, wrap up your current thought, your current insight. And when you have, students, once again, give some feedback to your teacher with the sentence stem, what I'll take into my life as a result of your teaching is. Go right ahead. What I'll take into my life as a result of your teaching. Students, begin wrapping up your testimonials of gratitude. Finish your current thoughts. And if you're the teacher, now it is time once again to relinquish your post and choose your lineage successor. At this point, the choice is probably clear. It's the person in your triad who has not yet been the teacher. So go ahead and anoint your successor through whatever arcane rituals you all agree on. And go ahead and once again close your eyes and come back to yourself. Closing your eyes, coming to silence. Letting that experience go, letting your role go, And as you prepare to open your eyes to a new experience, go ahead and, with your eyes still closed, expand that awareness to these people who are with you in this circle. And if you're about to have a new role, go ahead and let that in fully. And when you're ready, open your eyes. And if you're the students now, ask your questions away, prefaced with, "O wise teacher." And you can begin. Wise teachers, begin wrapping up your current insight. Come to a place of pause. And students, once again, give your teachers the gift of your feedback. What I will bring into my life as a result of your teaching is, please give them some feedback. You can begin. Okay, students, begin wrapping up your final words of gratitude to your teacher. And let's become one room again. If you don't mind, go ahead and move back up toward the front where we can hear some feedback about what this was like for you. I know it's difficult to tear yourselves away, and I actually really appreciate that. It seems like you're really connecting. And now it's an opportunity to have this connection as we begin to draw our evening to a close together. So if we can come, be one room. And I'd love to hear, what was that like for you? Anyone care to share with our entire group what this experience was like for you, being the wise teacher, being the curious student? Yeah.
I loved having permission to listen really closely and to be curious. Sometimes I feel a pressure to have a lot of, give and take in a conversation. But it was wonderful to relax into the curious student mode.
Relaxing the curious student mode. I'm curious, in your daily life, do you find yourself more in the student mode or more in the teacher mode?
Well, I listen to people for a living, so I love it. But I also have to, guide them as well.
Got it.
So just listening is wonderful.
Just listening was almost like a little vacation, like, I can just listen.
Well, and also I am genuinely curious. But I don't like to be intrusive.
So having permission was valuable for you. Awesome. Who else? Anyone else want to share your experiences? Yeah.
Kind of talking about how hard it is to listen, because
Mm.
when the other two students would ask questions, or when, whatever, I would kind of be thinking in my brain, well, how would I answer that question?
Ah.
I have your ears if you're listening.
Got it. So you were continuing to think about what feedback you would offer, even if you weren't the teacher. Got it. Got it. Does anyone else have that experience? I'm curious. Yeah? Some of you? Yeah? Yeah? Yes?
What I was surprised at is how much I enjoyed pontificating.
You enjoyed teaching. You enjoyed being in the teacher's seat. Awesome. Did anyone else really enjoy being a teacher? Yeah? Yeah? Awesome. And was there something that was novel or unexpected about that for you? All right. Were there any ways in which playing the role of the wise teacher made a truth or insight freshly available to you, like you were surprised at what was coming out of your own mouth? Yeah?
I'm going to tell a quick joke. One of our leaders, rabbi or ministers, gave it. I'll cut it short. Rabbi's praying. He says, "Oh God, I'm nothing." The cantor's praying. He says, "Oh God, I'm nothing." And the janitor in the back saw that and was so impressed. He said, "Oh God, I'm nothing." And the rabbi looked at the cantor and said, "Look who thinks he's nothing." And, the thing about being a leader is I think sometimes I feel like I'm a janitor and I'm afraid to intrude on them. But that whole idea that everybody has something to share.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. For sure. Yes. You and then you.
What I noticed was, no matter who was speaking as teacher, it seemed as if they were channeling like the Holy Spirit.
So you felt that insight coming regardless of the particular person involved in the sharing.
Yes. And they had this fluidness of these answers, this wisdom pouring out of them, and I just thought, wow,
Wow.
it was echoes.
Awesome. Yes.
What I liked about it was the structure that you set up allowed this being perhaps to communicate
Mm.
were not the structure that we set up in place.
Gotcha. So that exchange of insight and curiosity wouldn't have happened had the structure not been set up.
We were all set up to play some different roles
Mm-hmm.
because we set up in that fashion.
Right. You each got to take turns being the one with the insight and the one that was receiving and asking questions. Yeah. Yes.
The thing that I liked was that before we started to do anything, we went back to ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
That you reconnected to yourself before you were.
You enjoyed that grounding back to home base.
That was.
That's a thing that I try to do in my daily life, honestly. Even up here a bit while y'all are going on. Like, yeah, let me reconnect with myself and with God within before once again putting myself out there. I think it can be a valuable practice to try in your daily rhythm of your life. And it raises an interesting question, like this would not have happened had this structure not been set up. So how might we bring this structure into our daily lives? I think one of the things is if you're a type of person that doesn't consider yourself a teacher, consider that you actually had valuable things to share tonight. And see what it would be like to give yourself permission to share those valuable things in the relationships that you have in your daily life, with family, with friends, with coworkers where that's appropriate, etc. And if you notice as a listener, as a curious seeker, the power that you had to unlock someone else's teaching gift by asking them genuine, curious questions. And how might you be able to bring that to your life? I know for me it can be challenging with someone that, like maybe my wife or someone that's like a good friend who I've known for ages, think, well, I know that person. I know what they're going to say, etc. And that we often both get up, caught up in a certain kind of a rut. But if you can bring that stance of genuine, sincere curiosity, it can be disarming, and it could actually make something available in your relationships that you might not otherwise experience. And then finally, you can literally do this exercise if it's an appropriate setting. How might your dinner parties be enlivened if you're like, hey, let's play this crazy game? Your small groups, your Sunday school classes, your meditation groups. And this is fairly detailed scripted in the Divine Dance bonus chapter that you can get on my website. So if you like this format and you want to actually literally play this game, I encourage you to go for it, because it can be a lot of fun. And, by my lights, theologically, like a way of activating this priesthood of all believers that we ostensibly believe in, and like actually practicing it with one another. So thank you for playing. And this is what I had for you this evening. I'm not sure what we have time for at this point. I'm open to questions and responses about this evening and the exercises we explored, as well as things about the book, if you all want to stick around and ask a few questions. And then after that, we'll go out and sign some books if you'd like. If you've already got it and you want to get one for a friend, or if you brought your own copy, we can sign them. And I hear there are even cookies. So
Yay, thanks to Mike. Yes, I do encourage you. I know it's already almost 8:30 and you're here a little bit later than you had expected already, but see how much time flies when we actually start talking to one another? Isn't that great? So I encourage you to keep up the conversation and have a couple cookies, or not, if you're not eating cookies. I don't eat cookies. But there's coffee and there's water and there's other places to have conversations. So stick around a little bit, get your book signed. We'll let Mike go out first, if you would,
Yep.
Mike. And he'll be sitting at the table out there by the door. And you'll get a chance to ask some questions while you're getting your book signed. And then tomorrow morning, if you could possibly join us for more questions, that would be a terrific place to ask those questions. 8:30. Downstairs in what we call the moderator's room. It's one of the classrooms downstairs. It's got the kitchen in it. Am I going to be there? Oh, no. Yes, I am cooking because I picked up the bagels.
Oh, and then if anyone's looking for a small group, this is going to be doing stuff like this, then they can just follow me.
Yeah. How many of you are already in small groups? So in small groups here at Countryside? Well, if you're looking for a place to do this kind of stuff or have conversation with people, we have several small groups that are available. And Megan and Bob are one of the leaders of one of our small groups, so if that's something that you'd be interested in doing, you can at least talk to them about the process, and I am the one that helps schedule those small groups. So if their evening does not work for you, let me know and I'll find another one that does, okay? Thank you all for coming, yay, and thanks to all of our tech people. Good night.